Bluestone Coaching's YouTube channel where we're talking about all things women, mental health, physical health, emotional health. And we have our experts here. This is Dr. Eden, who is a board-certified gynecologist, and Julia who is a licensed mental health therapist, and my name is Caroline. And today we're going to talk about emotional and physical intimacy in your marriage. So we were just chatting right before we started, talking about how this isn't a topic we hear a lot about as women in the Christian world, this topic of physical intimacy and how important it is to us as women. So we've got a couple pretty amazing things to discuss today. So let's first start by defining emotional and physical intimacy in our marriage. What are those two things, and what does that look like?
Well, I'll address the emotional, right? So, and then I'll let Dr. Eden talk about the physical. But the emotional intimacy is having your spouse where your heart feels safe with him, and his heart feels safe with you. And you have the ability to talk about those heart issues, those emotional issues as a couple. And you develop that, right? So that becomes part of the atmosphere, your relational atmosphere, that emotional intimacy that you have, which enhances and leads to and helps physical intimacy.
It's true, because emotional intimacy is really the foundation that leads to physical intimacy. You really don't have like one without the other. They're so connected, and it is so kind of like Christ's relationship with the church. Like there is this like emotional intimacy between, and in everything you just said, like emotional intimacy being known and heard and loved, like we want that, we need that. And then when physical intimacy starts going to the side, where it's just not happening or not as important, there's a sense of shame and failure, and why am I not wanting to do that, and why isn't it the way that I picture that it is? And I have a lot of women come to me in my practice about this topic very specifically. Most women going through perimenopause have some change of libido, and almost all women have that problem after having a baby. That's how God made us, with our hormone changes too. So it's something I talk about a lot. But for women who maybe aren't in a season of a hormonal change and they come and that's a problem, a lot of women just assume that something's automatically wrong with their body. When in reality, if I start asking more questions about the emotional intimacy side, you know, I'll have a woman say, well, I would just rather watch TV. Like, it feels better to watch TV than to go be physically intimate. And I start asking about, like, if they are being loved or feeling valued, or maybe the partner is doing all those things, but they have a wall up to it. Like, it can be both sides or one or the other, and they've never considered that. So both so important, emotional intimacy first.
So what is the connection between emotional safety and physical intimacy?
Well, I think certainly let me back up. The statistics for sexual abuse for girls in this country is 1 in 4 and maybe 1 in 3 now. So if a young girl has been traumatized by sexual abuse, then often that will inhibit her ability to be physically intimate. And so there's therapy for that, for sure. There can be heart blockages that can keep you from feeling, physically available to your partner, to your spouse. And so definitely, if somebody comes in and they're seeing myself or Dr. Eden, and they're not being able to physically respond to their spouse, it's that question, talk to me, has there been any sexual abuse in your history? That's a pertinent and important question to ask, because that can definitely inhibit somebody's ability to be, fully available for a sexual experience, a meaningful, intimate experience with their spouse.
And then I'll have women who have had normal physical intimacy for however many years, and then suddenly it's not. And a lot of that is perimenopause, which is such a struggle. because women will be saying to themselves,
Mhm.
why am I not normal? Like a year ago I was this, my husband hasn't done anything different, and I'm trying to tell him that, but it's causing strain, right? And women can have new pain with sex starting in perimenopause or before for other reasons, and that changes things, right? Because mentally you have a block up from physical intimacy because it leads to pain. So it's always good to go to your doctor, because there's both sides. There's the emotional intimacy side, there's the physical, and one or the other could be needing a little help, whether through therapy or medical.
Wow. How would you say insecurities from a woman's perspective play a role in emotional and physical intimacy?
Well, so I'm obviously older than Caroline or Dr. Eden, and so I have seen my body go through a lot of changes. So I am postmenopausal and started out as being, 105 pounds, and then had 3 children, and then through menopause, and my body looks very different than it did now. So I've been married 40 years, and what does that look like in terms of just my own insecurities on my husband seeing me, naked? And I have really had to come to grips with that. I mean, it was a process of learning to appreciate my body and value my body and cherish it, because it does look very different, and I remember the way it looked versus the way it looks now. And I think for women, you really have to come to there has to be a place of contentment that you get to. Otherwise, you're always going to be discontent, and you're always going to be trying to work and change it and strive, and that can make you inhibited in your sexual relationship with your spouse. So I think weight gains, I think after each baby, there's an insecurity because your body looks different. Everything is stretched out. So yeah, I think the bottom line is you have to have a healthy relationship with your body, because insecurities can be very real. But I think in terms of your spouse, the bottom line is your commitment to him, is his commitment to you based on your physicality, how you both look, because that changes, or is it based on your commitment to one another, your love for one another? And so, but I think too, these are the kinds of conversations we don't have often. If I'm really looking different now than I used to. How have you, as a sister who's ahead of me, how did you do that? How did you navigate through that? How did you navigate through that in your relationship, in your marriage? And then having those conversations with your spouse about your insecurities with your body and the changes that are happening in your body. I think having a great doctor, you can sit and say, I'm experiencing this pain, right? Sex can become painful as a result of hormonal changes. And so how do you navigate through that? Because you still want to have an intimate, a healthy relationship with a sexual relationship with your spouse. So how can you keep doing that while you age and while you go through this? So it's so fascinating and so needed, I think, is particularly in the Christian community among Christian women, to be able to talk about these things.
And it's interesting because I feel like I find women, if we're gonna more focus on the perimenopause area just for a second, but women will either develop the pain that will naturally come from loss of hormones, and then there's it's just gone, no more physical intimacy, I'm just not doing that anymore. And then other women are doing everything possible to try to keep hold of it. And I don't know, I'm not saying that's wrong. It's not wrong to let go of that physical intimacy side. A lot of women I know do that. But I do wonder if that changes the relationship some if you can't. But then some women, I mean, there are situations with men even where they can't do physical intimacy anymore. Like sometimes medically, you literally just can't do that. But I have seen women that have healthy, emotional, intimate marriages with their husband without the physical. So sometimes you just can't. But I know for a lot of people, it's a huge strain. We're all trying to be the best partner we can be. And part of that is looking a certain way. So I'll find women like I'll ask them to think about what they look like in the mirror. Like, what age do you think you look like in your head? And a lot of them will say 20 to 25 years old, and they'll be 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, when obviously they don't look the same. None of us look the same 5 years later even. So we all have this image of what we are supposed to, I guess, look like, or the weight we're supposed to be. But perimenopause, God actually made it where we would gain weight. I've never met a woman that hasn't gained at least 10, at least during perimenopause, on our hips and our lower abdomen, and that's how God made us. He made us to do that, but our clothes fit different and we look different when that happens. And as our estrogen drops, our skin changes and our hair changes. Like, everything is truly changing, and it's almost like we are just trying to look like what we did, but there's so much beauty in all of our changes. I don't know if it's just the world trying to like tell us we need to be what we were. But everything you just said, going back to like contentment with wherever God has us and resting in Him in that. And some days I think it's really easy, and other days it's really hard.
Yes,
Really hard. So
absolutely.
not alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Even different times of your cycle.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
sometimes
for sure.
I know I start retaining water at a certain point, and then I'm like, I'm fat. And my husband's like, what? And then like my period ends, and my stomach starts to shrink, and I'm like, oh, I look great, and I feel great. Like, I've been working out, I can tell. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm retaining water again. I'm like, oh, it's a cycle. I think we compare ourselves to social media. I think for me, social media became really big when I was a freshman in high school, and now all I see are these women who have had work done or have the ideal body, and they're in bikinis and their makeup's done, their hair's, you know, they got the extensions, it's like all done, and here's this image that's also being presented to all these young men that this is attainable and this is what is sexy, and it's just not attainable, and they don't even look like that all the time, you know, because they all have cycles and they retain water at some point, you know, like it's just, I think it's really hard as a young woman. I remember always being really insecure about the way I looked. I remember I was always on a different diet, and I had a friend in high school tell me, Carolyn, it makes me feel really bad because you're always talking about the different diets you're on. I was like a freshman in high school. I remember if my stomach got a little bigger, I would eat, instead of having lunch, I would just eat it like an apple and just watch it like shrink back down and be like, okay, good. And so much of my worth became dependent on the way it looked, and then I carried that into my marriage. And I think it's hard for, it definitely put a hinder. I think even in the emotional intimacy, I had a really hard time accepting my husband's love for me. And he would say, he's so affectionate, he's very affectionate, and he's always saying really sweet things, and I'd be like, okay, you don't mean it. Like, I just wouldn't let it hit me, and I wouldn't believe him. And I mean, I think a lot of that's healed over time, but I've had to get off social media. So I've had to get off Instagram, I've had to get off a TikTok, and because I compared myself to those Instagram models and these women, but I've also seen a lot of Instagram influencers and models shift and start showing their imperfections on social media, which has been really beautiful, and just showing what it really does look like when the lighting is gone and you know, you're not wearing the makeup or the outfit or the right angle. So that's been really healing, but it's definitely a challenge. I think more and more young women are probably experiencing that going into their marriage, because I don't know how many women really walk around looking like that. But also there's a lot more access to getting things done and getting things enhanced, or, you know, and maybe those things are good, or maybe, you know, wherever you stand on that, or maybe it really does enhance your confidence. I
feel like contentment is something we're all bringing up. Like a contentment of what we look like, or what season we're in, and I think that does flow into that emotional intimacy with our partner, because like if we're content with where we are, then we will allow ourselves to feel known and loved by our partner. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've also heard the importance of the emotional intimacy side, because your physicality, like, it will change, and your sex life is going to change throughout, you know, your life and different stages of your life. But if you have that emotional intimacy and that foundation, then your physical attractiveness, the way it changes, or medically, like things change, your weight changes, your skin changes, you have that deep intimacy and like that union with your spouse, and that is what I think transcends those things. But we are a very physical culture, and there are a lot of really attractive people. And we see it all the time. Every time we look at something, people are airbrushed. I think that makes it really, really challenging.
Gosh, so for my kids' like school photos, my 4-year-old like had the option to have it brushed.
Really?
Interesting.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's incredibly interesting. Now I have a question. How do you think incorporating your love language helps emotional and physical intimacy?
I'll let you all speak to that. Love language.
Well, when I was newly married to Sam, we kept trying to love each other in the wrong way as far as love language, and we kept running into these walls, not necessarily arguments, but we were both not feeling loved. And somebody had given us that 5 Love Languages book that I'm assuming you're talking about, and it hit me that my husband's was words, and I never say I love you. It should just be known, right? Like, I don't know, I don't say it. I never would say it. And for me at the time, it was acts of service. And so we started slowly incorporating that, where I would be really intentional with telling him how I would be feeling, and he would go out of his way to do things, and we both were feeling really loved at that point, because I could actually care less if my husband ever gives me a gift. I will never feel loved that way. That's how God made me. And it is interesting, over time, I feel like our love languages have changed somewhat. What about you?
Yeah, so if you don't know, there are 5 love languages. I think we all feel loved in some way, but some more than others. So there's physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and acts of service. And so for me, my love language is quality time. So if my husband was ever like, oh, I need alone time, it would just break my heart into a million pieces. I'd be like, do you still love me? And he's like, what are you talking about? And his is physical touch, and mine wasn't when we first met him. So learning those 2 things. So now he knows, I'll say, you know, like if my love tank is full, it's a lot easier for me to be physically intimate with him, because I'm feeling really confident, I feel loved, and the way I receive love is different than the way he receives love. And quality time for me is sitting down and talking without distractions. For him, sitting on the couch and watching TV makes him feel just as loved as anything else, you know, but physical touch is what makes him feel loved. And then I think we're both words of affirmation. So when he loves me in that way, or if we go on a date and we have very intentional time together, I feel like my love tank gets full, and it's a lot easier for me to engage in physical intimacy. It feels, it just comes, I think, a lot more naturally. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for my husband and I mean, physical touch is his, so that speaks love. If I initiate sex with him, that speaks love to him like crazy. But the way I experience love is by acts of service. So if he does something around the house, or if he brings me my favorite Starbucks drink and he's doing things like that, then that speaks love to me. So yeah, I think there's value in knowing what each other's love language is, so that you can, you know, they're experiencing love from you, and you're not kind of missing each other in it.
Or even feeling hurt by the other not doing those things.
Right, absolutely.
And if they don't know, I mean, then you're just getting frustrated, because I would get frustrated, and I'm like, why am I so frustrated? Like, oh, because this is the way I receive love. You know, if he was constantly giving me gifts, although that would be fine. I don't know, I'd be like, no. It wouldn't mean as much to me as if we were having this.
Right.
So, yeah.
Mine changed, honestly.
Yeah?
Mine changed after having kids, and I think part of that is just, like, our brain, like we only have so much that we can think about
Yeah.
and do.
Yeah.
And so now mine's honestly quality time. If I can have 10 really
Yeah.
solid minutes without a cell phone nearby and no work and no children and it's just good quality
Yes.
where we meet, then I feel like my love tank is full now.
Yes.
But there can be no cell phone.
Yeah.
Rule
Yes.
number 1.
Yeah.
Put this sucker.
Put it away. But yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. So how can you pursue emotional and physical intimacy with your spouse in a way that honors God? And maybe you can speak to the specific season of life you're in. What does that look like?
Well, I think for the emotional intimacy, for us, it's being able to sit down and look eye to eye and really share those things that are on our hearts, what we're concerned about, what we're celebrating, being able to pray for one another builds that emotional intimacy. I think praying with one another is very vulnerable and builds that bond and connection. And so I think it's so important, not just with your relationship with our Heavenly Father, but with each other. And so I think making sure that you're making each other a priority so that you can have time, because it takes time and space to build that emotional connection.
You know, when I have patients come and they're talking about a low libido problem and we're diving in past the physical part, getting to the emotional part, I'll ask women, do you go on date nights? And a lot of people don't anymore or make that intentional time. I think that's so important.
Yes.
Even if the kids are graduating from high school and gone, like you can just be you and your husband in your house and still not carve out intentional time.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be fancy or a bunch of money, but it's just like, you know, you're going out at that time to have that face-to-face time with each other. And gosh, I love the prayer.
Yeah.
It's so true.
For sure.
I find a lot of women will say, I just never know what's going on with him. Like they're keeping it all in. Like the woman isn't sure what they're worried about or what's really going on inside. And I just think if you're praying together, that would give you that connection.
Sure.
You know what's going on with him. He knows what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Like you can't help but have some emotional intimacy from
Absolutely.
that. It's beautiful.
Here's a beautiful question to ask your spouse and for them to ask you is, how's your heart? How many times in our life do we have someone who's saying, Caroline, how's your heart? Dr. Eden, how's your heart? But for the person that we love most in this world, that knows us better than anyone, for us to ask that question and for them to ask us, because then you can begin to hear, you know, what is really going on. And I think too, it's if there has been a level of disconnect or there's been a lot of arguing or there's relational issues that have caused unhealthy relational patterns, you are less likely to sit and trust them with your heart. So if you find yourself where you're just roommates or you're just angry with your spouse all the time, I highly encourage you to find a really good marriage therapist because it is so worth staying in the arena and working on those things so that you can, you know, until you take your last breath, you can have this beautiful, rich relationship with your spouse. But it is hard. Marriage is hard and it takes a commitment and it takes work. So anyway.
I think that's so true. I find women who have younger kids struggle with co-parenting where like everything is about the children and the relationship with their partner is way over here, the relationship with themselves and God's like way over here, like everything is about the children. And so sometimes if I'll ask them the question about date night, I mean it's almost like, well, that's kind of a joke, like everything is about the kids. And it's so easy to do that because they are like you love them so much and they are everything, but it's like how you said earlier, like God is first and then my spouse and then my kids and you know, he's there. So giving him that time, you know, one day the kids do like go older, move on, and it's you and him. So even through the chaos of small kids, like it is so important just to stop and make your partner important. In fact, my husband and I were talking about this in the last month. it just got brought up, and I told him, it's like, I realize in front of our children that we don't, we're not like intimate at all, like even like physical touch of any kind of way in front of our kids. And then as soon as they go to bed, we'll sit next to each other or hold hands, but like in front of them, we are so focused on our children. So we made the decision maybe like 4 or 5 weeks ago, when we get home, we're gonna have 10 minutes of forced, no matter what they want us to do, we're gonna ask each other about the day in front of them instead of waiting till 8 p.m. And then we're going to like do what we normally do, hold hands and sit next to each other and be intentional together even when we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And my 4-year-old twice now, since we started doing that, has come home with artwork of mommy and daddy holding hands as we love each other so much.
So good.
I had no clue that he was watching us that closely.
Oh, yeah. The greatest gift that you can give to your children, it doesn't matter what age they are, is a healthy relational atmosphere between you and your husband. There's no secrets to kids. They may not understand what's happening, but they can sense when there's a disconnect between you and your spouse. It really is the greatest gift you can give your kids. If you're so focused on them that you're not able to take care of your marriage, then there's an imbalance in that family, and your kids will not benefit from that. I know when Mark used to come, my husband used to come home from work, we would have couch time. So before he did anything with the kids or me, he'd say hello, but we would go and we had a couch in our bedroom. We would sit there for a few minutes and just kind of rewind the day, just check in with each other. And what that said to our kids was, daddy's relationship with mommy is most important, and mommy's relationship with daddy is most important. Of course, we adore our children, we still do, we cherish them, but we were very intentional about keeping our relationship the number one priority, and I'm grateful we did, because our kids left, as they should, right? And for many marriages, that's a time when they fall apart. The divorce rate is high during that season when they're empty nesters, because there hasn't been those relational habits and that intentionality of keeping that relationship, the marriage, healthy, so that when the children do leave, there is still enough of a relationship that you can build the next chapter of your marriage in. So it's really wise, and it's for your children's benefit, to keep the marriage the most important relationship within the family.
It seems so unnatural, honestly, because the kids are like full force yelling at us, "Daddy, wrestle with me. Dakota wants me to go dress up princess with her." Like they're in our faces, wanting us to be with them. It's so natural. It's harder to like put them to the side and say, "My husband's first," but it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And mommy, we are gonna play with you, but mommy's gonna go talk with daddy now, because mommy loves daddy, or daddy is gonna go play, or gonna go talk with mommy right now, because daddy loves mommy so much.
So good.
And that's so good for them to hear, and so good for them to see. And you're modeling for them what a healthy marriage looks like for later on. I mean, it starts from day one when you bring them into their home. I mean, kids remember the relational atmosphere within the home. That's what they know. That's what they remember. So, anyway.
Good.
Yeah, I remember this. There's an archway, and my parents' bedroom is here, and our bedrooms are back there, and we were not allowed past the archway during couch time. So we could not, unless we were like bleeding or something, we couldn't interrupt couch time. And
that's great.
Yeah. I also always remember my dad flirting with my mom a lot. And my dad was always talking about how beautiful my mom was, always. And they would slow dance in the kitchen and play love songs. And they're very clear with us that they were never going to get divorced. I think there were a couple conversations we had where mom or dad would say, that's not something you're ever going to have to worry about. And I remember one night my parents were watching the news, just sitting on the couch together next to each other watching the news. I didn't think anything of it, because I was like, my world. I had a friend come over, and she saw that, and she's like, I'd give anything to see my parents just sitting down watching the news together. And I was like, that was just my life. My parents loved each other, but for most kids, I don't think they have had the opportunity to experience that. So it really is a gift when you can model, a healthy marriage, a healthy relationship for your kids, because I remember that, and I always knew, all right, this is the way a man treats a woman. He calls her beautiful, and he does slow dance with her, and you know, my dad would treat me that way too, and always open my door for me, and you know, he always loved my mom really well, and so now that I'm married, it was much easier to pick a spouse because I had that idea of what that healthy marriage was supposed to look like. So it is really important, really beautiful. Oh man, there's so many different things we can dive into, but yeah, definitely pursuing physical intimacy. I think for me personally, I had to learn the things that my husband really liked and enjoyed, and learn how to love him in a way, and then him with me. But we also, when our budget changed, we had to learn about date night. So we know how to do a really expensive date night, we know how to do a free date night. And just figuring out how to make the most of the situation you're in. So we have lawn chairs that we put out front, and I just ask him to sit with me, and we have dinner in the lawn chairs, instead of having dinner in front of the TV. And just
awesome.
Small things like that, or like, you know, going to buy cheap dessert from, you know, we had no money when we got married, and so all we could afford to do was get an ice cream cone from Dairy Queen. So Dairy Queen was really cheap.
Special, though.
And so we'd go to Dairy Queen, I think it was around COVID, it may have been the only thing that was open, and we'd go get ice cream, and that was like our date night, and it was awesome. So I think that's so important, no matter what stage in your life, those date nights, and they can look, you know, and be flexible. And we schedule hours now because we're busy. That's another question I have for you ladies. I've heard, you know, in marriage counseling and things, do you think it's okay to schedule physical intimacy?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, I think that there's seasons again in your life where you don't have to, and you can be spontaneous, and you have time to do that. But when you're example, in your season of life, when you have 2 little ones, and you're running a business, and your husband is working, and you're busy in your church, and there's all kinds of things, if you don't set aside time for physical intimacy, it's really easy for it to go, you know, weeks. And so, yeah, but I think every couple's different too. So to answer your question, I don't think it's wrong at all to schedule it, but I think if couples don't, and they're still able to connect, yeah, absolutely.
My brain went to fertility. Of course you gotta schedule it every time you get pregnant. That's where my brain went. Like, track those periods.
Yes.
Sperm hangs around for 5 days. So, you know, you gotta time those things, which makes the process of trying to conceive not necessarily the most enjoyable if it's always like this most scheduled, intense thing. But when you're not trying to conceive and you're just trying to be intimate, I mean, I think that for a lot of people, the weekends sometimes are easier than work weeks. And in talking just with women, it seems like a lot of women schedule that for the weekend, that physical intimacy, because for a lot of us, like we know the next day we're going to get up early and it's going to be work, and you're kind of thinking about what happened that day. And in order to like get into that headspace, you have to go through that day, let it all go, talk to your husband about it, think about tomorrow, and then get in a headspace where you can be that vulnerable to have that emotional intimacy, then physical connection with your husband. So it's a lot, and I think you can get there during the week. It just takes a little bit of planning of like everything, because for women, we just don't naturally go there. To me, I don't know. It takes some steps to get to that point where we feel that safe, like physical intimacy, and let go of the day and tomorrow.
Yeah, that's good, for sure.
Yeah, so as we close, what is one piece of advice you'd give to a woman who wants to grow in this area in her marriage?
I think like everything else, be intentional. And I think being able to communicate with your spouse what your needs are, but also being open to what his needs are. So both the importance of that emotional connection as well as that physical connection, to make it a priority.
And piggybacking off of what you just said, communication. You can be married for a really long time and do physical intimacy the exact same way for the whole time, when maybe your partner wishes it was a little different. But that is such like it's hard to communicate and say to your partner, do you wish we did things differently? Is there something you wish we did? That's a very tough conversation for a lot of people, but it just opens a whole door, because if we remember that it's actually all about the other person, like our physical intimacy is really about trying to please our spouse, and our spouse is trying to please us, and if that's the focus, then there's no shame in that question, because if the answer is, well, I wish we did do things differently, there's no failure on our side, but that is like the fear, right? So that would be my one encouragement, is communicate, maybe ask if there's anything you could add or do different, because maybe you also wish that too, but there's no platform for you to say that.
It's good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I was gonna say, just ask a lot of questions. I think we don't always talk about sexual intimacy as Christian women, and a lot of us wait till marriage. Not everyone, but some of us wait till marriage, and so we have no idea what we're going into or what to expect, and then we feel embarrassed or shamed, or like we should know, and we just don't even know where to go or what questions to ask. But I would say ask a lot of questions of other married women, or someone who's you could ask your doctor.
Always happy to go to. I know. Safe space.
Yes, your therapist, a friend who's been married for a longer period of time. I mean, you could ask your spouse, what's working, what's not working, and learning just to ask a lot of questions, because there are a lot of things I didn't know. And I remember on my honeymoon, I was texting my sister-in-law, who's a nurse, because I felt a little awkward texting my mom. I was like, can you tell me what to do? And she kind of had to encourage me or help me walk through it. And I just didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't know what to ask. And so yeah, there are a few really good books to sheet music. I forgot the name of the author, but we'll have to link it in the description, because that one was really good for a Christian perspective on physical intimacy for couples at different stages of life. I remember reading that and being like, kind of connecting the dots for, when you're trying to navigate those things. But yeah, asking a lot of questions and being willing to be vulnerable, and yeah, there's no plan B, right? This is your partner, so you want to be with them for a long time, so you gotta work and put in the work, and it's worth it, especially if you ask the questions and you learn and you grow, and it's more fun, and you get closer. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you both for being really open and vulnerable for this topic. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to put those in the comments. They'd be happy to answer your questions. And if you ever wanted to talk more, you can book a consultation with Julia, and you can also book, if you're local, an appointment with Dr. Eden. And we'll put the links to both of those in the description. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. We thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.